Hello, welcome to Myelopathy Matters, the official podcast for the charity Myelopathy.org.
Where we talk all things degenerative cervical myelopathy from the perspective of the researchers, the professionals and the people living with myelopathy.
I'm Michelle Starkey. I'm a scientist, a mum of two and the director of Myelopathy.org.
And I'm Ben Davies, neurosurgeon, researcher and co-founder of Myelopathy.org. Welcome to anyone listening. I guess that is a question of anyone. We hope someone is listening. But this is the first ever Myelopathy.org, we're calling Myelopathy Matters podcast.
Yay!
So I'm Ben, one of the founders of the charity, part-time neurosurgeon, part-time researcher in DCM, and I'm joined by my colleague from Myelopathy.org and the research side in Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Starkey. I'm doing various things for Myelopathy.org, but supposedly running it at the moment. It's nice to say hello to all of you.
Yeah, hello. And I have just been having some off-microphone conversations with Michelle, who's extremely nervous about this, and the fact that her family pedigree is at stake here, because I hear your sister is an expert in podcasts.
Yes, she is, and also TV. So actually, you should have switched her in. I think we sound quite similar. She's also a doctor, but not of neuroscience or anything that we would be interested in.
Did she offer you any top tips on what you should be doing?
That she should do it instead of me.
How rude. How rude. But I did say that I thought you'd be very natural because you have a talent for talking.
I do talk a lot.
And this is a conversational podcast. Brilliant. Okay.
But you're keeping me away from my Christmas shopping, so...
Not completed?
No, not yet.
So about 5 days to go. Who's missing?
I know. Well, the important ones.
Mark Cotter?
Yes, of course. Everyone.
Am I covered?
No.
Oh, God. We should have done a Secret Santa, actually.
Well, you could have one of these lovely mugs, our new mugs that we're selling.
Or T-shirt. I've actually bought you a present. It hasn't arrived yet.
Oh, that's so
just to make you feel bad.
My favourite colour's purple, so...
Yeah. That's not far off, actually. Not far off. But we are looking and drinking out of some fetching mugs designed by Ewan. I've got the Bionic Spine by Myelopathy.org in black.
I've got Spine Wars Strikes Back. It's great. They're all in black.
All in black.
Very Christmassy.
Dark subject. Anyway, I mean, I guess we should talk a little bit about why we're doing this, and hopefully it is a work in progress, and we really welcome any kind of feedback and what we should be doing with this podcast. But the ambition really is to make sure the community is being heard, that people are being recognised, and everyone's being kept up to date with how the charity is progressing and where it's going, because we're very much of the opinion that this is a community project. This is a community challenge in myelopathy, and it's coming together as one voice that makes us stronger.
And we also want to hear from you, because we sort of go out and do the things that we think are important. But it's also nice to hear from all of you whether you think we're focusing on the correct things and if there's something else we should be doing. So for me, it would be really nice if this was a sort of two-way thing, that we sort of tell you what we're up to and then you let us know what you think and what we should be doing.
Great. And I guess we should get into it then. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we've been up to and trying to progress in the last few months with the charity and touch on a little bit of the RECODE project, which had a momentous moment in New York a month ago, and we'll hear from Ewan, who sadly based in Wales can't frequently be involved in this podcast, but we'll get him on remote interviews. But I guess just in terms of discussing some of the feedback that Michelle was talking about, one of the things that we've become very aware of is that the support group isn't working for absolutely everybody, that people are coming in at different parts of their journey, getting different types of information, having to relive the same experiences over and over again, which can be difficult. And that is something that we're trying to look at new solutions for.
Yeah, definitely. We often get feedback that people come in and obviously initially join our group when they're about to have surgery, so at a point when they're quite scared and need lots of feedback, and the support group's fantastic for that. But of course, if you're someone that's had your surgery and been in the group for a while, what ends up happening is that you often hear the same story over and over again. So we've been thinking about ways of sort of making the group a bit more uplifting, or thinking about having a place where the people who have sort of gone through their surgery and are living life now with myelopathy can go to, that's a bit more uplifting and more upbeat. But also keeping that initial part of the group, because that's what's made it so strong, that people can come in when they need some support and help, and there's people there to talk to them that have been through it.
Yeah, and I think we really look for any kind of ideas or wisdom, and of course, info@myelopathy.org is the way to get in touch with us, or through you or any of the admin volunteers on any of those groups. But we are looking at different ways, and one of the ideas is to move off Facebook to different platforms that offer these sort of community groups, perhaps plenty of subgroups or additional aspects of support. And one of the companies that we've had some conversations with is called Unmind, which are really at the moment based in sort of big corporate companies, and they're there to provide mindfulness and support to their personnel who perhaps are going through difficult times or whatever, and be able to direct people to the right content. So it's a real personalized package. It's a very early conversation, but I was quite impressed with what they were offering.
I was really impressed too, because I thought it would be a sort of generic package. Here's a whole bunch of things that you can listen to when you're feeling a bit down. But what I quite liked about it was that they were sort of looking at information that was coming back from the company, and various things that happened in the company that had led people to feeling a little bit unsure or anxious, and then feeding in information based on that. Like you say, very personalised. I was really impressed with that.
And I think that's the way to offer people information that they want to see. It's a little bit of making sure that the information is personalised, not so generic. I was really impressed, and I'm sort of aware of the idea of things like mindfulness or healthy minds, and I know, having lived with Ewan for a few days in New York, that he has his moments for an hour in the morning where he must not be disturbed. It's also an hour he has making himself look beautiful in the mirror as well. But it's a long morning with Ewan. But he really speaks of the benefits that he's had from that kind of service, and he uses various apps to support that. And I think that could be really, really powerful.
Yeah, it's really good. Obviously, we've mentioned it before, but we're recording this just before Christmas, which is quite a stressful time. And I have another app on my watch, and I've noticed that whilst I've been running around the shops and going to various nativities and stuff, it's giving me little reminders. Do you want to take 5 minutes? I don't have time to take 5 minutes. But it's really good. And I think this is going to become part of, our daily life, isn't it?
You get time to check out and have a time out.
Yeah, and it feels very indulgent, but actually, I think I've read Ewan's recent blog, and actually it's really important, and the benefits he's seen in terms of pain and
less medication.
Exactly. And just taking this time to sort of do something for yourself. And,
and I think on a broader sense, we do recognise that things like the quality of life and a mental health perspective are massively poor in myelopathy. With really, at the moment, we haven't really been able to explain why or look at really addressing that. But I think that will be really important in a condition which, unfortunately, is part of life until the end, isn't it? Really.
But also, speaking to people from the support group, you obviously, from our perspective, we think, okay, you've had this diagnosis, which is something to sort of get your head around, and then you have your surgery again, something else scary, and then you move on. But obviously, when you speak to them, you realise that there are other factors. It's affecting your whole life, and obviously there will be times when it's more difficult than others, and especially if you're not able to work and you're relatively young, these things are, you need help with. And
I think that's another challenge for us, isn't it? Because the perspectives and where you're living is obviously very different. We've had some conversations with, is it Mr. Murphy from the States?
Yep.
And I think his feedback was really that the information that needs to be provided for US residents, for example, is different.
Yeah, so we've been looking a little bit at our website and how it's performing, and we now know that we're sort of half of the traffic is coming from the US, but a lot of our content is coming from the UK. So he, independently of that, contacted us and said, do you think you'd like any content, sort of US-based content? And I think it's really important because, of course, half of our traffic is coming from the US. So it will be really nice to see. I think the benefit systems are different there. And he was saying the workup prior to surgery is different in the US. So in terms of getting information out and preparing people correctly for their surgery, it would be really important. So it's a nice collaboration, and he's got some nice images coming to us soon, hopefully, which will be nice on the website to show the condition better and what's happening. And
fantastic. Yeah, we're looking to produce a sort of proper download that someone could read and really understand the journey up to and through treatment, I think, which will be helpful with that.
It'd be really helpful because obviously when you're sat opposite the doctor and they're giving you all this information, often with technical terms, you don't take any of it in. So I think having that...
You're saying not listening to every word that I say.
Yes, but you're not taking any of it in. And it is, you want to go away and you look on Google, which is the worst place to go because it just scares you.
Dr. Google.
Yeah. So I think having this sheet, and also you can hand it to family members and say, okay, this is what I have, and so you can better understand it. So I think that would be a really important one of our tasks, one of our many tasks for
the
next
list is
year.
pretty long, isn't it?
Very long.
Yeah.
Yes.
And more volunteers, any volunteers, always welcome. Because one of the other conversations we had following up from the launch event at the House of Lords in July, was from the Institute of Osteopathy.
I was glad you asked the question, what was the difference between osteopathy and chiropractic? Because I was sitting there going, is there a difference? I think you'd even invited me to a chat with the Chiropractic Institute.
Oh, God.
I was totally confused.
This is recorded,
Anyway, so there is a difference.
There is a difference. And apparently it goes back to the fact that one of the Americans who sat his osteopathic exams failed them.
Yeah.
And therefore was so frustrated, set up the Institute of Chiropractors in America. That's coming from the lead of the Institute of Osteopathy. That's not from any other reference that I know. But he seemed that certainly was the story, wasn't it? But there is a distinction. But I think interestingly, some of the information that I got from that conversation was that still both very well regulated. Both have sort of 4-year courses to pass through university accreditation, a legislative body, and separate institutes which sort of oversee them as a structure. So from a sort of professional side, I was quite surprised at how organised it was and how professional it was, even though they're not necessarily part of our normal NHS service here in the UK. And
obviously, from my side, I'm looking at it more from a patient perspective, and just interested to see how you get diverted down the pathway of physio or chiropractic or osteopathy, because it sort of tends to be that people prefer osteopathy and then they tell all their friends do that. Or so
I just thought chiropractor meant spine and osteopathy was the rest of the body. That was my layman's impression, but it's not at all.
No.
And I didn't realise that the osteopaths don't necessarily just do joints. They also do, they call visceral. And you mentioned the craniofacial stuff, which I think is big now for children, isn't it?
Yeah,
breastfeeding.
Yeah, and because it's supposed to help with sleeping issues, especially if the child's been born via C-section, I think.
Right.
I've heard about it quite a lot. I didn't try it with my children. I just sat through nights and nights of no sleep. But
Well, at which point you try anything, and maybe that is part of the sales pitch. But I mean, I think what was interesting is that they do report there's about 5,000 osteopaths are said in the UK, and they do see a lot of people with myelopathy. That's sort of anecdotal. And I know from informal conversations with people in the charity, including some of our trustees, that they found great benefit with seeing osteopaths in their treatment. So it was a good chat, I thought.
And also they do this survey that they were saying it would be nice if we could get involved in. So we'll leave that up to you for the medical side to come up with a good question. But I think, getting us involved in that type of thing, even though, it's not so many osteopaths, it would be really good to sort of highlight it there and say, this is a condition, this is something you might see, people might present to you with.
And what to do with it. And they've invited us to talk at their annual conference next October, which I think will be a good opportunity to highlight myelopathy. Because, I think everyone can be quite dismissive of different types of approach and different types of ideas and different types of science. But I think fundamentally, as long as people are arriving at the correct diagnosis as soon as possible and dealing with it in the right way, I'm welcome to any kind of solutions. And I think
and as a doctor, do you ever get involved in any of that, or do you do the surgery and then sort of just pass them off and expect they're going to be put down a certain pathway? I mean, I've no idea. Do you ever get feedback from your patients about what they've done and what worked?
Very informally. And I think, because for so long it's been thought of about as a sort of allied professional, very distant or alternative medicine, and some people might even call it that. I think naturally through medical school and training you become, maybe you don't switch off to that kind of conversation a little bit, but we don't really. I mean, we focus very much on our own individual job lot, and I mean at the moment people with myelopathy get very limited additional care outside of really surgery, some occasional physiotherapy, the burden of medication that they try for different types of symptoms such as pain, but there is no real structured rehabilitation routinely used. There's no access to all of these other types of therapies. I mean, there was that blog written by Delphine about hydrotherapy, which she had to go out and find and get access to and found great benefit to, which I can understand warm water environment, low weight bearing, movement. She found great benefit from that, but that's not something that's routinely provided. You've got to really go out and search for this.
So it seems that we don't really know what we're talking about, and people should get in touch and tell us
what works,
what they've
them.
had, what works, what they'd recommend.
And how, and then we can start looking at whether or not some of these things work. Because one of the interesting angles from that conversation was how there seems to be a growing drive to have more osteopathy on the NHS or involved. Part of that drive was the fact that there's not enough physiotherapists in the service to meet demands, and there are examples now where osteopaths are sitting in care pathways for other conditions, and I think there's an opportunity to help that in myelopathy. Anyway, work in progress, I suppose. But again, an interesting chat, and I look forward to seeing how that relationship develops. But the other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about, of course, was RECODE, which sadly so far Michelle's been so occupied running the charity and in other veins has had less input to, but that's going to change next year. My
credit card was happy I didn't go to New York, that's for sure.
Mine wasn't. Yeah, I think the fact my wife wasn't invited led to a very expensive present, but anyway, hopefully she'll be happy on the 25th of December. Otherwise, there's a long way to go to return it. But we'll see. But we're going to hear a little bit. I had an opportunity to catch up with Ewan whilst we were there. Obviously, I was sharing a flat with Ewan in the French Quarters, which turned out to be a little bit of a drinking point for many of the attending Myelopathy.org members.
As if it wasn't planned that way.
And I can tell you that some of our counterparts in the States certainly do know how to handle their alcohol much better than me. But I guess we should hear from Ewan, and then we can catch up a little bit afterwards. Well, it's a warm welcome to New York. I'm with Ewan. We're sitting in our breakfast area in our small hotel in the French Quarters, which is very romantic. I arrived late last night, Ewan yesterday afternoon. We're all pretty excited about the forthcoming RECODE-DCM meeting.
Yeah, I've met a few members last night, and I'm super excited to meet all the rest of them today. So, in person, we've probably spoken to each other for the last 5 years.
It must be interesting to meet, because presumably you've chatted to them online, but not necessarily heard their voice.
Yeah. It's everything's been done online sort of thing. I think 5 years back when the group was actually first started, we were sitting in New York.
It's mad, isn't it?
All meeting up. Yeah,
it is mad. And is there anyone whose voice or in person seemed particularly different to their Facebook profile?
No, I think everybody speaks so nice. Yeah, it's a great group of people that actually come from all over the world, really.
Well, Ewan's a little bit nervous because he's giving a small presentation before this meeting this morning. He's already had 3 cups of coffee. He's been to the toilet twice.
I'm preparing
himself. Yeah. I haven't heard the Welsh vocal warm-up or anything in the shower yet, but I'm expecting that later on.
Yeah, if I could actually do it in the House of Lords, I think I can actually put it off here as well.
Amongst friends, probably a bit easier.
Yeah. So, you think because you've spoken to everybody online, you know them, the personality and everything that's come through on social media.
Yeah.
So, I beat Tim last night, and it was exactly
as he was online.
As he is online as well. So we had a good chat yesterday.
It's really powerful, isn't it? Because I know one of Mark's visions is to try and have more offline meetups. They have a different connection, don't they?
Yeah. I think today is going to be an opportunity for people to speak to each other, speak about the problems in person and so on.
Yeah.
And I think speaking to somebody face to face is much better than speaking to somebody online or something.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to meeting everybody. It's so many names. I don't know so many their faces.
And I think also what was coming through last night is that there are health professionals there who are interested in this condition.
I mean, that was always my dream, I think. I mean, you and me sitting here sharing a hotel room, we only met online.
Yeah.
But it's the idea that Myelopathy.org is a sort of, you plant a stake in the ground and it's a real community of everybody invested in myelopathy from every perspective, and I think that comes across in this project as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I remember us talking when we first, when Myelopathy.org was launched something as a charity that we won't be known as a sort of grown club. organisation rather than, a group that's just from the UK.
We are. I mean, I think people have come from the UK, Canada, all over the States, and further afield, I think. So it's really special, really special. I'm excited to be here. We've got a few days to try and get to know everybody.
Yeah. Hope that everybody takes away from today the message that research is emotion, really, for the people who have myelopathy. I think we'll make a lot of friends today as well. Long-lasting friendships as well.
I think that's so powerful. That research is emotion. It's an amazing line. I think that is so true, isn't it? I mean, I can imagine that if you're living with something day to day.
We've got to get it up there so everybody's really on the same page, exactly what to do when it comes to symptoms and treatment, because a lot of people have sort of had the symptoms for years and years. When you have maybe appropriate treatment.
I have to say, having met and worked now with lots of people with myelopathy, and you in particular, I think it's really opened my eyes up. I think the problem is that everyone's perspective as a professional is quite niche. With a disease like this, you have so many people involved in the diagnosis and workup. You have a different group of people involved in the treatment, and a different group again involved in long-term care. So as a doctor, my perspective is quite focused to a part of this story, and the only person who's involved in the story from the start to the end is the person with myelopathy. And I think that perspective has not been recognised enough, and it means that when we describe the symptoms of myelopathy as a professional, I have a list which is very small. When I listen to you guys describe how it affects you, the list is enormous, and I think we need to reconcile that, definitely.
We talk about just travelling, what you're going to do, you've got to pre-plan everything, travelling wise and things like that. It's a massive game changer really. Yes, preparation is key when you have myelopathy.
We probably need to think about getting into a taxi now. Just go and register for this meeting and get this long day underway. Final question, I guess. Is there a particular question at this stage that you really want to see in that top 10 research priority list?
Something that we've sort of discussed is the mental health issues with myelopathy. But that will be my number one question I was thinking. Really.
Well, let's see what comes in. You're obviously in a position to influence today. I'm simply spectating now, but we will look forward to what the outcome is.
So that's breakfast with Ewan. That's what we talk about. That's what happens.
And he had some nice music playing as well.
We did. I think we had some Christmas playlists in the French quarters with all the decorations. Good breakfast, actually.
Were you having pancakes, I hope?
No, I had a bagel and cream cheese.
Classic.
Ewan had tanks of coffee.
To prepare for his talk.
But to prepare for his talk. He certainly did. But it was a good conversation. I mean, because we don't see each other that often. It's all, it's mostly online, and then you have these checkpoints where you feel like things have come forward, and that was certainly one of them. To have what was an informal conversation back in 2015 on Facebook to a meeting in New York was it was good.
It must be especially nice for him because he's the one, on a day-to-day basis speaking to these people online to actually meet them as real people.
Yeah.
That must be really nice.
It did. And I was interested because he said that everyone was very much who they were online. There was no red herrings. He said, what is it? Tim was Tim. I'm not sure what that means.
But the press don't lead us to believe that, do they? We're all trolls and stuff. But it's nice to know that some people are being real online as they are in real life. That's true.
No, it was a good meeting, and I mean, it was all about the end of a process to set the top research priorities for myelopathy, because it's been shown elsewhere that if you bring people together, the people living and working on the front line with the disease, and ask them what should be researched, then if you answer those questions, you've got the best chance of changing care in a really short space of time. And so that was really what the meeting was about. It was a culmination of a long process that started online and ended with a top 10 research priorities that we're going to launch hopefully in the middle of next year. So it's strictly secret at this stage, but I was really proud of what we managed to achieve.
So you're not going to tell us anything?
Well, little bit of hints. I mean, I think some really interesting things came up in terms of global terms. There was the issue around awareness, which you and others really championed. The need to demonstrate what the cost impact to both individuals and society came up. I think those are two really important questions. And I think it was interesting going through that if you asked the professionals, they didn't rank very highly. But if you asked the people with myelopathy, they were up there as some of the biggest and most important questions. And I think that just shows you why you have to have both of those people in that room to make a list which is really representative.
I don't know if you can answer this, but what was the spread of sort of respondents to the questionnaire? Was it quite heavily patients, or?
We had no, we didn't. I mean, we had a lot of surgeons actually. I was surprised. I mean, I wasn't unsurprised. I mean, the moment surgeons are 80% of the research field, and they truly, at the moment, lead on treatment, and they're really a focal point for the disease. So that didn't surprise me. But I think I really wanted to get away from that because, they've been actioning their research priorities for a long time now. And I think it's the other perspectives that we were lacking. So they were well represented, about half, and then about 25% people with myelopathy and 25% other healthcare professionals, which is a massive range. In that room in New York, we had a GP, we had sort of pain medicine, anesthesia, physiotherapy, 3 physiotherapists. I mean, we had a really broad representation.
That's great. It's really nice that they've all been able to give their input and you see it from all the different perspectives. But I guess even nicer when you see that they sort of come together to similar types of...
I know, we had this fantastic... Things. I mean, Mark spoke a few words at the beginning, and then Dr. Failings gave a very emotive speech. It was very off the cuff, but it was almost like a crowd pleaser. I think I talked to Ewan about it in a second. It felt like... I don't know if you've seen a film called Any Given Sunday, which is about American football, but I think it's Al Pacino at half-time gives this very long but very sort of passionate half-time talk, which really turns the team around. But that, at the beginning of the meeting, I thought set the day up very well, and it really galvanised the people there to sort of work together and set that top 10.
Yeah, he has had lots of practice though.
At speaking.
Dr. Failings, yes. It's been on I've seen him on a few TV programmes talking about myelopathy and other things.
He was interviewed in Russia recently, wasn't he?
Yeah, I don't know. Various different things.
Yeah. Well, I have, in a future podcast, he's very kindly given us an interview. So we will have, I think, up to 45 minutes with Dr. Failings. I might do two podcasts for that one. But he really has been a fantastic champion for myelopathy, and he does speak from a great experience of it. So he had a lot of good things to say. But perhaps, I guess, we could hear from you and again, and we spoke a little bit about after the meeting and what's going to happen next.
I'm joined again with Ewan. We're sitting in our apartment, the French Quarters in Hell's Kitchen in New York. Dust is settled now on what was really a fantastic 48 hours for our community. I thought we'd just get a few thoughts on how we think it went, where we're going to go next, really.
I think I'm still digesting it.
Yeah?
Yeah. And I don't think everything's going to sort of sink in when I get home, because, I knew it was going to be good, but I didn't know it was going to be this good. All the participants were so friendly, and I feel like we're moving on as a family, not just an organisation. Yeah, I don't think we could have handpicked the members. Every member that actually travelled that far to be here for RECODE-DCM, absolutely amazing.
They were tremendous, weren't they? They had so much insight and perspectives, and I think what was interesting from everybody, I felt, was that they were really arguing the cause from not just on their own behalf, but on the behalf of who they represent. So
everybody else.
Yeah,
and the health professionals as well. They were absolutely outstanding.
I just take you back to the beginning of the day when I think Mark got up and outlined some of the vision, and then Michael Failings got up and gave what I think was some sort of it was like that sort of pre-match game talk, wasn't it?
Yeah, inspirational, changing room talk. Even though I've been involved in the project from the beginning, sort of thing, until I got into that room and everybody started speaking, like Michael Failings and everything, I think everything sort of hit me there and then, and I think, like you say, it was an uplift in the room where people were there and they were going to make a difference to future research
Yeah,
of
I think
myelopathy.
so. Yeah, it did. And I also remember looking at the room in the beginning, and obviously we had a sort of central aisle, didn't we, in a sort of small forum, and it was like the school disco. We had people with myelopathy on one side and the healthcare professionals on the other. But by the end of the day, it was
total mix.
Total mix.
I would say, people were sitting in between health professionals, discussing matters and all that. And I guess, like I said in the meeting as well, it's great now that when we first started, we wanted to have a voice, but now we have people who are actually listening to our voice, sort of thing. And I think that's sort of spread into the myelopathy community and for the people who were there as well, which made it. I'm still absolutely gobsmacked how well it actually went. Yeah.
As am I.
Yeah.
Let's just go back to the beginning of the morning, because obviously we had this uplifting speech from Dr. Michael Failings, and then we heard from somebody else, didn't we?
Yeah.
We heard you came up with your pre-prepared...
Yeah, that went out the window. Yeah. I had my pre-prepared speech, and I got that up there, and that went out the window. That did completely. I just... it was quite really, really emotional to stand up there, look at people that I've probably spoken to for the last 5 years, and have them in the room, sort of thing. Like we discussed years ago, I'm probably repeating it again, that, we wanted to make it a global community, and, it's happening, to have people from all around the world, in one room.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's surreal, absolutely.
We should add up the collective miles people have travelled, actually. It'd be interesting to... because there's been some serious travelling. Yeah.
And we've had a WhatsApp group going, and that's been absolutely amazing to hear the feedback from everybody, and everybody sharing the videos.
Yeah, but no, it's been absolutely brilliant, hasn't it? When I was going through the day, actually, there was a moment where I felt that there was going to be a great challenge in bringing this sort of top 10 together. There was some quite... Because, just to reiterate to people who obviously weren't here today, this was a process that started months ago. We've been working online to produce a shortlist, and then the start of the day, or so 2/3 of the day in the workshop, was about small workshop groups, wasn't it? So, different groups, and they were producing their top 10s, and then it sort of merged towards the end, wasn't it? But it did seem to come together, actually.
Yes, it did. It was surprising. Right, number one for me was going to be sort of the social aspects of it. We were looking at the mental health sort of implications of myelopathy as well. So I'm glad that's in there, and of course the awareness that.
Well, I'm totally with you. I mean, the socioeconomic question for me is a real issue when I try and talk and sell myelopathy to the sort of policy funding type people. Unless you can demonstrate real numbers and costs behind what you're trying to change, they just don't open the cash books, unfortunately. And there was a point where that was sort of drifting towards the bottom, but it did come in, didn't it?
Yeah, it did come back in, and I'm glad in a way, because it's so hard for not just people from the UK, but we've heard stories from the US and so on about claiming disability, because a lot of people, they're able-bodied, and all of a sudden they have myelopathy, and because of the long diagnosis and the treatment, you're left with disability. So, that is costing the government money when a person actually becomes disabled. So if we can portray that we are, this person doesn't need to be disabled. This person can carry on with his life, be active, have, carry on with his job. The figures there should, balance everything out. But like you're saying, it's hard to actually get that message across.
It is. I mean, those numbers must be there. We just need to try and bring them together, and I think that's why that question is important. But just touching on another point there, because that idea that, because I know what you know, I think from talking to you and others in the community, there's great difficulty in accessing these sort of disability support. I think one of the issues is there is an image issue. It's a hidden disability, isn't it? You guys, if someone passed you on the street, would see you as functioning. And it was there was an interesting anecdote from Shirley, I think, early on, when she was we were talking about some of the issues of definition and, you know, spinal cord injury versus degenerative cervical myelopathy, and she'd been part of the Spinal Injuries Association, which obviously has people, you know, who have had devastating injuries and totally paralysed. And they called the DCM people walkers.
Right.
Because for them, they couldn't walk, and I guess DCM, a lot of people do walk. But for Shirley, that was a sort of real, like, sort of put down, you know. Just because I can walk doesn't you know, say I'm, you know, perfect. Do you know what I mean? And there is that identity crisis, I think.
Yeah, and the thing is with myelopathy as well, even though we can walk, it's a condition that sort of, if you sort of push yourself too far, you know, you knock yourself back for about 2 to 4 days. You know. That was actually interesting. That was a question. That was one of the 74 questions that could have been shortlisted. It didn't get that many votes, but I think that's a fascinating question, because that is something that I, as a professional, never totally unaware of. But you know, I hear that from yourself and many other people. And what is that? You know, why is that you know, have an exertional day? And pay for it for. And you know, it's everything we do is, we've got a really forward plan for everything as well. We can't really book things into the future, because you don't know how you can feel in that day. So activities, social events, you know, it's
planning.
Forward planning. It's really difficult.
I'd be useless. I can barely plan. The next day, as my wife will tell you, sets it tremendously. I'd be terrible.
I don't know, every aspect of the event has been absolutely brilliant. Even when we met up in the bar the night before, met some of the members and everything, and everybody's just gelled together. As you know, there hasn't been any awkward moments. Whatever. Sort of. So from the pre-drinks the night before through to everything. And then all meeting up at the end. It's been absolutely mind-blowing, really. No,
I think there is something magical about New York, isn't it? Magic things do happen. It's probably one of their taglines, and hopefully this is another one of those magical things.
And hopefully, we can do some more in the future, and, you know, it'd be great to meet more people of our community, and I think it gives the people who have actually participated in RECODE-DCM a better understanding of what we want to do, what is our vision, and so on. And I think for them to be there and be part of it, you know, it really shows us
something tangible.
Something tangible. What is planned for the future?
I think we need to work harder on that. I think that's a good point. That connection between the community online and what the vision and what we're trying to do. Because I guess it can feel a little bit distant, perhaps small steps. It's what they say, atomic steps, small steps, but, you know, big impact.
I
think that's right. It's got to start somewhere. So 24 hours left or so. I hear that your kids are demanding.
I've got to go and get some toys for them now.
Any ideas?
I've been told. I don't know what I'm going to buy. I've had a quick look at it, Times Square yesterday, Central Park. Absolutely amazing.
It is, isn't it?
Really nice.
Central Park is enormous.
My calves are killing me today, so I'm probably going to suffer for the next 2 days.
Well, you were chasing birds, weren't you, yesterday?
I was chasing birds, and we were feeding some friendly squirrels.
And just for clarity, that was animal birds. That was the feathered kind. But, although this morning we have had some tantrums from Ewan, because he's been traipsing around the apartment trying to find his hairbrush.
It's got AWOL, so I'll have to get a new one on my shopping list.
On the shopping list. Okay, great. Well, hopefully we look forward to catching up back over the other side of the Atlantic. And
and I think it's all going to sink in quite soon. It's still a bit surreal at the moment.
I've got to build on this momentum, I think.
Look where we are now in New York.
I know.
We would never have thought of that 5 years ago.
I'd never.
Just by connecting
on Facebook.
Internet.
It's some powerful thing, isn't it? I thought that when I was looking around the room, you know, what the internet can do. I mean, there are obviously problems with the internet. We know that. But one of the things that I try and explain to people, for something that has got absolutely so much lack of awareness, is that we're starting to build that critical mass that we need to really shout louder enough to be heard.
Yeah,
And I think that comes from the fact that everyone is working together. You know, whether you're a professional, you're someone who lives with myelopathy, you know someone with myelopathy. It's about coming together as one voice, I think. And the internet has enabled that, and things like this can crystallise from it. But
definitely,
I hope it's the start of something pretty special.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, you're right there with the network and everything. We've had the opportunity to network with probably the top health professionals in the world, really, in their field.
Yeah. And I think in that light we should pay a special thanks to AOSpine. Because really they are the framework through which this has been possible.
Yeah,
they
big
have that
thanks to
platform.
Alessia,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many thank yous to go out. We won't list that. We'll put in the credits.
Yeah. Talk to again.
Totally.
Brilliant. Absolutely great.
And I think we've won her over. I mean, that's an example of what you can do when you bring somebody in who doesn't know about myelopathy, and she's just identified with the problem and just the community. And she was saying to me, I think one of the unique things about the participants in the workshop, the people with myelopathy, is that we're already sort of a community. It wasn't like we were just random individuals thrown together to give their perspective. There's a community there. And it's a special atmosphere.
Yeah, it's probably harder to get sort of individuals in a room who haven't actually sort of spoken to each other before.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, because I always call it the myelopathy community. Yeah, and after today, it's probably the myelopathy family. Yeah, so that's how well we've actually connected. I think.
Yeah, I really think so.
I think we've made some lifelong friends as well along the way. This trip. So
I saw Rosie was inviting everyone to Palm Springs.
Yes.
We're putting satellites around the globe. Anyway, well, great to catch up in person again. I'm sure we'll do so again in the UK, and look forward to the next chapters.
Yeah, bigger and better things, and watch your space, I think.
Can you just say that again on recording now? What did you just say?
I just said, honestly, the things you get me to do for this charity.
All about pushing you out of the comfort zone.
I'm permanently out of my comfort zone.
But
I'm enjoying it.
That's where the most important and creative things happen.
So it was a really nice recording. I think Ewan sounded really sort of emotional at the beginning.
He did, didn't he?
I mean,
sweet. My dad's a passionate Welshman as well, and I think there's a strong character in a Welsh man of emotion. and he was emotional.
Yeah, but it's a big thing for him. Like we were saying before, he's the person that sort of brought this together. So to actually meet these people, and I thought it was really nice, the bit you described when you said that initially, the people with myelopathy were sat on one side and the healthcare professionals on the other. And by the end, they were mixing, because that type of thing is just very difficult to do unless you're sat with each other.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
And I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it was so, everyone as a team. It was coming together of a team. It really was. And I think it's so powerful. I mean, we need to get more and more people in the team, and I think it's a critical mass thing. Once we get a bigger team, we'll start to, more people hear us, and the team can continue to grow. I think it really, really is that, and I think the story and the passion and the power is all there, and all the ingredients are there. We just need to watch this story grow. Yeah,
and I'd like to know the amount of miles you actually travelled, because you're going to have to justify that to Greta.
That's our university costings. Nothing much gets past that accountant. No, that is true. That is true. And but there are, of course, many more miles to go. And the sort of long-term plan with RECODE, obviously there are other objectives that we've set ourselves to work on. But in terms of the top 10 research priorities, the ambition is to release those in about May of next year. And the reason to have a slight pause is that we need to build a framework around the priorities to really promote them. Because fundamentally, if we can set these challenges, these questions, but if no one listens to them or responds to them, then it's absolutely meaningless. So there's a lot of hard work being done now, but there's a lot more hard work to be done, and that's what's happening in the background, and hopefully we'll be ready to launch everything in its glory and follow up on that in the middle of next year.
How does that happen? Is that through a publication or
Well, it's a good question, isn't it? I mean, I think it's been a real lesson to me, actually. We were coming up to the New York meeting, and it suddenly dawned on me that we've got to get people to look and read this. Mm-hmm. And I was actually reading at the time the guidelines for treatment of myelopathy, which was a fantastic and enormous project, again done by AOSpine, which, to be honest, has had a limited response so far. And all they did really was publish it and present it at a spinal conference. And I realised that actually that's just not enough now. You've got to somehow cut through the noise and really get this to the people. And, we're trying to reach a community that are not currently listening to myelopathy, which is even more difficult. So it's why we're trying out lots of different things. So we are planning to have the publication, but alongside that want to have a special edition of the Global Spine Journal, which will really cover in detail each question, summarising where the evidence is at now and what sort of directions could be gone on. We're looking to appoint ambassadors for each question that can really champion those questions. We need to reach out to international funding bodies and explain to them why they need to back these questions. So there's lots of different things going on to really try and make as much noise as possible, and being led by both professionals and people with myelopathy. So it's a lesson in knowledge translation, which I'm only starting now to realise how important it is.
So I know I have a little bit of experience from the spinal injury side, different type of project, but, they went through this process of finding out what were the research priorities. And I think in my case, it was the results that actually led it, because they came out that actually people in wheelchairs are not so bothered about walking again because the wheelchair is quite a good solution. Whereas all the researchers were thinking, well, that's what we need to solve. And what came out was actually that, hand function is really important. And that was the area that I was interested in. So that was then picked up by everyone in our field, sort of working on that. And then, these papers were then published over and over again. Oh, look, they want hand function. And so I think maybe there's something like that it depends what the results are and what research is going on, and people will pick up on it. And
you're absolutely spot on. We had to wait for the results to really be able to inform that strategy, and that's again a reason we couldn't just launch straight away. We had to have a pause, because part of it is matching the kind of fields to the question. Certain questions require a different type of researcher that perhaps isn't currently involved. I mean, going back to the spinal injuries thing, what was interesting from that field, there was a survey done really, I think in the early 2000s from Kim Anderson, which really surveyed you're nodding your head, you obviously know what it was, but it surveyed the population of people with spinal cord injury about what their priorities were. And I think that was one of the landmark moments when they realised that actually, young men, for example, who were heavily affected by spinal injury weren't so bothered by the fact that they were in a wheelchair, but they wanted to have some form of sexual function. Yeah. And that championed a whole new dynasty of research. And I highlight it really because we modelled a similar survey on that, which has only just been published in the BMJ Open, well, not quite yet, imminently, it's been accepted, which we'll share the results with you in the future. But it's, again, done through the Myelopathy.org community, and identified that pain was the number one research recovery priority for people with myelopathy. And that was never really been measured before in myelopathy. So I think it's a lesson that you've got to ask these sort of questions, and otherwise the research ends up being misdirected.
Absolutely. And in Kim Anderson's case, not only is she a brilliant researcher, but she's also in a wheelchair herself. So when she sits there and tells these are the important things that people in wheelchairs want, it hits harder, doesn't it?
I think, it does. Very powerful speaker. Yeah. But I mean, we've got challenges, because I think the spinal cord injury research field is enormous. It's well joined up in many ways, and there's a ready number of mouthpieces to serve them. Whereas in our field, we've got to make the mouthpieces before we can even get the message out there. So lots of work to do, lots of work for Myelopathy.org and anyone else who's interested in promoting that message. And there's a website, right? So if people want to have a little bit more of a look about the project. We'll cover it here, we'll cover it at Myelopathy.org, but there is the RECODE-DCM.com where people can turn their attention to, and more media outlets in the future, hopefully. And there's a nice cartoon on there, I think. I enjoyed explaining what you did. And hopefully there's another one in the offing. So plenty more material, plenty more interviews with Ewan to come, and others, hopefully to convey the story. Very nice. It's great. Looking forward to hearing those results in May. Yeah. We'll set our timers. We'll let you into a sneak peek, I think, before that, Michelle. But maybe not off the recording device. Anyway, that was the first take. We survived. We don't know if anyone's listening. Hopefully we can look back on this and just watch the journey and development. And in the future, Michelle Starkey will be the number one podcaster in the family, not the number two. But seriously, any thoughts, feedback, any ideas? If there's stories that you want to tell us about or be interviewed about, then all you need to do is let us know at info@myelopathy.org, or reach out to Ewan or any of the other Myelopathy.org administrators and volunteers. because this is really hopefully a portal to get all the different stories heard, the community understanding what's going on, and helping to make sure that we as one community are working in the same direction.
It'd be lovely to hear from you.